Our wonderful executive producer, Mr. Dave Tabb, is in the house today. God bless him. Thank you, Dave.
Thank you, Dave.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, pal.
It's good to be here.
Hey, everyone. Connor here. We just want to take a moment to thank you so very much for tuning in and being a part of the Decon Chamber family. Your support keeps us going, and we couldn't do this without you.
And if you love what we do and want to help us even more, please consider joining us on Patreon. You'll get exclusive perks, behind-the-scenes content, and even opportunities to chat with us directly.
And don't forget to check out our awesome merch, because who doesn't want to rep their favorite podcast in style, baby?
Every little bit helps, I promise you. And we're really very, very grateful for all of you who make this show possible. So thanks for being there. And please enjoy this episode of the Decon Chamber.
The show has begun with Connor and Dom. It's the Decon Chamber.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, trekkies and trekkers, welcome back to another watch party for the Decon Chamber. I'm your co-host, Dominic Keating, joined as always by my mate, my bestie, my fellow co-host, Mr. Connor Trinneer in the house.
Hey, yo.
So this morning, and that's giving it away. God, we work early hours, darling. We're gonna review our 7th episode, which is called the Andorian Incident, which is unique for several reasons. I'm quite excited. This was Roxanne Dawson's first directorial effort with us, and that was interesting. And story by Fred Decker, who did you know Fred? I didn't really.
I didn't know Fred, no.
I didn't know Fred either. Screenplay
By everybody.
by everybody. Yeah, it was. It was Brannon, Rick, Fred, I guess.
Yeah.
And it's unique in many ways. It introduces the Andorians, I think, for the first time as actual live, beings. I think they were featured in part of the animated series after the original series.
Well, they're in the original series, aren't they?
I don't think so. The Romulans are.
Oh,
But I
no.
think-
We'd seen Andorians.
Are the Andorians in the original series? Okay.
Yes.
The Andorians
Yes.
are in the original
Certain
series.
of that.
I'm getting.
The weather today is going to be slightly cloudy, and the Andorians were in the original.
Yeah, blessing. So we are unique for bringing them back at least as proper live action characters, and then with the moving antenna, that was a big deal.
Yeah.
It
It introduces Jeff Combs to us.
Jeff Combs and Mr. Ricketts. Is it Jeff Ricketts too? Who was played Caval? Who was his?
He was wasn't he in the pilot? Was he not in the pilot as one of the members of
Was he?
their group when they're talking to Archer? I could be wrong about this. When the Vulcans are talking to Archer about, what we're supposed to do or not do, and he has his whole speech about what the Vulcans have done to. I'm not sure if he's in that scene as well, but yes, this is the first time he has a significance in an
role,
episode.
yeah. And he was in Fight or Flight, I think, too, as the Axanar captain. All right.
Mm.
Yeah, and they're heavily made up. Yeah. I'm just getting word about that.
Yeah.
But it's a good episode, and I particularly liked the introduction. I mean, you guys are a bit. I mean, I guess it goes in line with what the prequel had as its sort of, what's the word I'm looking for?
It's ethos in a way.
Yeah, exactly. And you and Archer are a couple of good old boys in those early scenes. But
I'm literally, if you could throw a catchphrase at me,
Yeah.
I would have said
you were
it.
saying it.
Catchphrase the entire time.
Yeah, it was a bit like, oh my God, he really is NASCAR.
Yeah. Well, if there's a dog, man, you should feed it.
It really was a bit. It was kind of hokey, wasn't it? I mean, there were some hokey moments.
There were some hokey moments, but I will say that it feels to me that this is the first episode where um, we as a show are um,
There's a dog you should feed.
that we're part of the notion of the message of our whole show.
Yeah.
We're like, we're going to go do this. We're going to go see something. We don't know about it yet. We get told by T'Pol that, they're all being, quiet. And we're like, well, whatever, we'll go see it.
Yeah. I like, but so leading to that scene, I love that scene between her and Phlox in the mess hall.
Yeah.
When they're having lunch or something. And it brings up the IDIC, the infinite diversity and infinite combinations, which is so timely for our times right now with everything that's going on in the country. And, if ever there was a message that Gene Roddenberry left, it was that. And
yeah, I love how T'Pol says whatever the Vulcan mission is, and Phlox grabs her piece of celery and then is like,
messily eats. I love the messy eating of it too. It's so John. He just didn't care. It was all pouring out of his mouth.
Yeah, he gives their mission statement.
Yeah.
And then he gives our mission statement.
Mm-hmm.
And then he kind of goes, well, maybe think about that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I thought that was really
that's poignant
for our show to I really believe that this episode was clear in the way that it launched what our mission was.
Agreed. And to that, with that in mind, you and Captain Archer it was just ever so slightly overcooked, I think. The sort of
totally
the eager kids trying to get out of out of the sandbox and
if the lid's open, you should probably shut it.
Yeah.
I said this. I watched this episode this morning, and I was like, "Dude, could you be any more catchphrase?"
Yeah, it was funny. I have to say, I giggled myself. But I love that scene between them is great, and I like the fact that Phlox draws attention to the fact that he feels at times quite alone on the ship because he's the only Denobulan, and that it's
a very clear, good example of the differences in their races and in the way in which that they, Phlox as a Denobulan and T'Pol as a Vulcan express the import of what they're doing. And it's a very good example, and I think that it begins an arc that T'Pol, played by Jolene, carries throughout the entire series, and it's the first time I believe that it's addressed in a way that you get your foot in your mouth.
Yeah, she's I have to say, the more I watch her, the more you see going on that wasn't maybe evident on the day, but it's all there on the screen. And there's some very witty bits. I mean, you forget that we smell dreadful to Vulcans.
I know.
I'd forgotten that.
There's that scene with Archer sharing the blanket, and she's like, I haven't had my neuro spray for 24 hours.
24 hours.
Oh, no.
Yeah, it was rather amusing.
But as we start the episode, we walk into a scenario where, we're going to potentially look at another element of Vulcan life.
Right.
And then we get news that they may be, I forget the term.
Kolinar, yeah.
Kolinar, where they're all silent.
Yeah. I mean, they are in peaceful meditation most of the time, but Kolinar is the particular sort of
specific yes, and it's a specific area, and to be there is a very
on Pajem
thing, Pajem, and then we're kind of like, all right, what the hell?
Yeah, let's go anyway. So I know there is that sort of slightly gauche, attitude that we can just drop in, That's what a mission's all about, isn't it?
And just say hi.
And just say hi,
Yeah.
which is just a visit. I love it. It's a
Yeah.
sort of Canadian visit.
Right.
Only to find that the doors are bashed in, and
I
she
loved that scene. I loved that scene when we all walk in and there's what's his name? Is that the guy who you were mentioning earlier? The actor?
the no the Vulcan
The Vulcan leader of
the
the
lead, yeah, the head. No, that's I forget his name. He was lovely though, wasn't he?
he was great.
He had a great presence, and
And then we're sitting there kind of going, well, all right, well this was cool. What's that broken thing?
yeah.
And then the fact that there should be more people there,
Hmm.
and it becomes clear that something's going on. And what I also love about this and the entirety of the episode is that we find out later that we'll get into is that the Andorians have a reason for
Yeah.
this,
Yeah.
and a very real one
Yeah.
that we discover, which I think also creates more tension and for our relationship with the Vulcans and to Paul.
I remember when we first chatted with Jeff on the prior iteration of this show. I remember him saying distinctly that his sort of background story for the Andorian relationship with the Vulcans was much like the IRA apropos the British occupation of Ulster. That they were subjugated by a power with greater technology, greater advancement, which is what the Vulcans were to the Andorians, and that they were freedom fighters in a way. They were trying to just find their way against this overpowering menace. Clearly, I mean, the Vulcans, they kept the humans at bay for some time, and now we find out that they're also doing this to the Andorians.
And not to give any sort of sense other than what I can say from myself is an association is like the Vulcan setup was very Chinese, very very Asian, very very something that was
It was monastic, wasn't it? Tibetan monastic.
yeah. It's very secretive, very, and I'm not to say that that's a Chinese thing, but there's a political bent to this entire thing that we can all make sort of same day associations with.
No kidding. Yeah. Yeah. Well, as it turns out, as we know, I mean, yes, the Andorians had every suspicion. Their suspicions were duly recognized, and yeah,
What I don't understand about that is that how if the Enterprise or the Andorian vessel had the kind of technology
right,
you think they had,
yeah,
that they
right,
wouldn't be able to go like, hey, by the way, you downstairs
yeah. There's
got
a lot of
whole thing going
computers.
on.
There's a lot going on.
Yeah.
Yeah, there are. They could detect. Yes, when Malcolm arrives, they could detect three more life signs on the planet, but they couldn't figure out.
Why wasn't there this like four-story,
Yeah, really. But maybe it was just well insulated with,
with lead.
yeah, with lead. So Malcolm gets his captain moment, which I was a bit nervous about. I could tell, bless me. And I almost pulled it off. I mean,
Oh, you did. Of course you did.
yeah, I could have been a bit more, what's the word? Just grounded, I think. Yeah, slightly. I think I was.
I don't know. I would disagree with you. I think that, the reality being that, the army officer comes in to sit in the captain's chair would not know what that's like.
Well, agree. Okay, yeah, then fair enough. Yeah, then maybe because it was this is early on, and Roxanne was, I mean, God bless at that time, she I mean, not that many directors looked at performance particularly, but she especially at that time in her first episode was very focused and just razor on just shots and getting her day. And I do remember that.
I think it was one of the, this is what, episode 7?
Yeah, in actual in
Yeah,
in actual
in the
episodes, yeah.
chronology. I will say that, her, I don't think she'd had a lot of experience having done more than, some episodes of Voyager. I don't know how much she'd directed prior to that
I don't
episode.
think so. No.
In fact, I thought that Roxanne's episode was one later on, and it was this one. And I remember thinking watching this morning, that her work with Marvin and the way that the way in which they subtly moved the camera to ensure there was a three, there were three people, or there was and by the way, for a first-time director on our show to have the requirement of, I mean, there's 4 Andorians.
There's a lot of people.
There's
Yeah.
4 of us. And
Yeah.
sometimes there's 11 of us.
Yeah, there is.
And
I thought that too. There's a lot of coverage.
And I thought that she seamlessly managed that. I thought that
She did. She was very well prepared. I remember she had a folder this thick.
Yeah.
And she had, a whole sort of, what do you call it? Bible of shots and what do you call it?
3-hole binder, man. She had a 3-hole binder that was full.
She did. She and in some ways it was, and you kind of go, well, why am I doing that? And I know your adage is always, well, I'll go and get some nuts from over there.
It was like, I'm gonna go get a bag of peanuts.
Yeah. And but you had to fit in with her shot making that she'd already figured out. This is how it's going to
I also appreciated that she recognized, and I think this is one of the first episodes where some sort of just light character nuance played in. For instance, Linda in the first part, she's kind of like, well, maybe they're just trying to find out what's going on down there.
Yeah, right.
And there are moments where she leaves the camera on a reaction that I thought was really good.
Yeah, and brave, if you will, because the temptation is to move quickly to the next active scene. Yeah, agreed.
Right, and there were so many people.
So I mean, the coverage was. I looked at that, particularly the hostage room. I mean, it was just stacked full of people.
11 of us.
And to make sense of that, the geography of that is always daunting.
Tell that story visually is not an easy task.
No. And God bless. I mean, Marvin Rush, our DP, I mean, he held our hand a lot, I know. And I remember them, huddling in the corner a lot and him saying, well, you need to get that, you need to get this. And he's, that's when you need a really good DP, when you've got all that experience, that he can see this, what the editor's going to need to make sense of making this.
Well, imagine what it's like to come in. I mean, granted, it is still a Star Trek show, but to come in and to recognize and understand the tone of something that you're making and what it's meant to look like, and I think that they had a really symbiotic relationship with that and worked well together.
Yeah.
I remember thinking, at the moment, this was our first time with a first-time director of our show.
Yeah.
And there's this sort of like, all right, do your thing.
Yeah. Coming into our ground and my
exactly.
I like this is also Malcolm's sort of first foray into being the action man, where he has to go and rescue the captain.
Well, wait a minute. You jumped over a log very well in the previous episode.
Oh, I did. True that. I did. I was very proud of that. I looked very nimble.
Nimble.
But yeah, I quite enjoyed being the action man, and that so all that stuff you've got going down into the catacombs, uh, and um, and seeing Hadak, who's the founder of the monastery, and all the elders, and you've got the immortal line, "Hey fellas."
Yeah.
It's so disrespectful in many
So
ways.
disrespectful.
It is. I mean, it's very right up.
Literally, almost every reaction I have is kind of like,
It's a bit, yeah, it's a bit like, really?
and and in
You wear those
hindsight,
skirts every day?
I really think that that did a disservice to it being dangerous.
Right, right.
I do.
Yeah, the light. Yeah, I hear you. I mean, yeah. I mean, it's funny because did you ever think to play it a different way, or it was written that way, really, wasn't it?
Oh yeah, at the moment I was at that time on the show, I feel as though I was meant to be relatively sort of insensitive to
Right.
scenarios like
Yeah.
this, and this was a good example of that.
Yeah, you were sort of,
It changed later, but at the
yeah,
moment, I was kind of like,
thigh slapping, hee haw. Yeah.
yeah, and like I said, catchphrase this and that, and I think that when I watched this morning, that I thought that we could have gotten more out of that than I did, or
Yeah,
we
maybe, your experience of going through those sacred catacombs could have been just deeper, you know. And
and
you
more
could have
res
had a hate. You could have used the word. You could have said "Hey, fellas," but said it in a in a very different tone.
more respectful.
Yeah, no
Yeah,
kidding.
and I wasn't at any point in that, even
No.
with the Vulcans, with the Andorians. I was. This is one of the things that drives me crazy about watching some of the things that I've done. I'll as an example, with Stargate Atlantis, there were times in which, also with Enterprise, that I thought that you know it's very easy to give a catchphrase. It's very
Mm,
difficult to make a catchphrase land.
mm, mm.
And I found myself watching this going like, there was an opportunity there to not just be a
Yeah. Could you do it less?
exactly.
Do no duty, Dench.
When she's off stage, she's
Uh,
incredibly awful.
but on
But
stage,
yeah,
yeah.
but also and I will say that I thought that everyone in that episode, all of the guest stars,
Hmm.
so good.
Yeah, really. Yeah, they were very just they were utterly grounded and convincing.
Yeah,
Uh,
and it's the first time we ever meet Jeff
yes, God bless. And
as
obviously
Shran.
he'd had he'd been around numerous times on other iterations of the shows. And I wonder what that was like for him. I forget if we talked about that for him coming into our cast. I think we were an inviting cast. We and a respectful cast like that. And we certainly got a tone from Scott that you first foot forward and hand out. And but it must have been I mean, I wonder what Jeff felt. And this was a good part for him. And I remember the moving antennas was a big deal. I mean, do you remember those guys off to the side with
Oh yeah.
the sort of PlayStation monitors, and like drones, like moving them around. They did squeak. He probably had to loop ADR most of his performance, I would have thought.
You know what? It's funny you say that because I was watching this and I felt as though, because you can, as an actor, having done this for a long time, you can kind of tell when your scene has been looped.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You can
And I felt like most scenes with the aliens were that way.
certainly in the
But
close
I'll
up.
also say, well, not even
Well,
the
that's
close up. I think that any time that, you know,
the antenna moved. They tended not to move too much in the wides. It was when he had a close up that and he got agitated, particularly or suspicious, then they'd start moving. And yeah, and I heard that. You can always hear
Oh yeah.
the
It's
different
a
tone.
funny thing. It's like, so audience, think about it this way. So the idea is that you have a scene with, say, 3 or 4 people, and you're operating and you've done your work to what the scene's conclusion is meant to be. And then in the meantime, when you're in that scene, you hear this. And it throws you in a way. And that was interesting. It's one of those. It's like an acting class when they say, okay, well, here's your scene, but we're going to throw in that you're in a hurricane.
Right. Yeah.
Now play it.
That play it. Yeah. Yeah. It's suddenly it's a very different scene.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's amazing when you are on stage or in the scene on set. I mean, you can hear a pin drop, 25 feet away,
Oh
and
yeah.
it'll put you off. It's amazing what takes you out of the moment, particularly if you've got quite a lot to say, or when they call action, and suddenly it's like, okay, the camera's on you, and this is, it's all
And
you,
this is
baby.
and this is the world. This is
And
the
this is
world
the
here.
world, exactly.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's yeah, I used to get quite agitated when you'd hear noises off, as it were, and like, could everyone shut up, please?
Yeah.
I'm trying to concentrate here.
Right.
But yeah, Jeff, but they were great, the Andorians, and
That's the other thing too is that especially in this episode, as I recall, um, we didn't meet them as people. They'd been there at 5 o'clock in the morning,
no,
and they're
agreed,
just
absolutely
Andorian.
right. No, well, we didn't. We met them all as blue faces,
Right.
with antenna. Agreed.
Right.
Yeah.
I remember having really good conversations with one of them, and over the course of the week, and saying to him, "Man, I have no idea what you actually look like." You
You
know,
don't.
no idea.
I'm, actually, I'm rather handsome.
Exactly. I don't have quite the high forehead you think I do.
Talking of looping, I was telling this story to my fiance the other day, Sarah. I once went in. I think we've done this episode when the captain does that fireman's lift down the armory stairs and lands with me and Anthony. And I got in to do some looping, and they'd left some Easter eggs for me. And one of which was when Scott lands and Anthony's kneeling down next to me, tinkering with some pads, and he turned around and went, "Oh, Captain, you scared me."
Yeah.
And then there was
Okay.
we were under attack by some, I don't know, some other alien force, and the ship was getting blown apart. And they cut around the ship to the different reactions, and it went to you, and I think you left with like, you're like, what the
Yeah.
And then it went to Linda, and she goes, and then it went out to Jolene, and she happened to be going like that. I banged my head.
So the audience knows what this is like. So we record the episode, we film the episode, and then they determine based on ambient noise or whatever that's going on. And we all go into separately
Yes.
to our own particular tracks. We go in separately to this big room.
Yeah, it's a big studio.
Steve,
Yeah, with a
Steve,
huge screen.
the producer was
Steve. Oh, well, Welky.
Steve Welke. Yes, Steve Welke. And he was, thank you. He
Done it
was
for years and years.
so good at this, and he would allow these sort of
Yeah.
Easter eggs to come in. But the reality is that so you walk in and you've got an hour set up for yourself to do your looping, your ADR, and there's you and with a microphone. There's a music stand, and then there's like 3 or 4 microphones
Yeah.
further along. And then, so what they do then in the producer's booth is that they give you the scene and you see the scene and you kind of, mouth what you're supposed to say. You've got the lines on this music stand,
Then they beep you in.
and then they do beep, beep, beep,
Beep.
go.
Go. Yeah.
And that's how you loop it. And you have to find a way to uh, put yourself back in the scenario of the
Hmm.
scene.
Yeah, it's an
Um,
interesting thing, and some are good and some are not so good.
yeah,
And
I
yeah,
loved looping. I loved doing that. I really,
sometimes I've made a performance way better. I know
yeah,
that. Like, and I can actually hear bits that they didn't want looping. I'm like, yeah, let's go back and get that bit too. I could
right.
do that a bit. I could do that better.
I
Um,
can tell in almost every film I see when it's looped.
right,
One, by the environment.
right.
Like, for instance, when I was watching, oh, what's that great movie about World War One, 1917?
17. The one shot film
Sam
that,
Menendez did.
yeah, that Sam Menendez did.
Yeah.
Yeah,
They looped that whole thing. Of
they must have done. Yeah,
course they did.
yeah.
The environment, because what you have is,
There's so
especially when
much movement going on.
you're
Yeah,
shooting outside or you've got movement happening,
right,
there's no way in which you can make that sound work
right.
well.
No.
It's a huge part of our business.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I enjoyed it. And yeah, and I've often, as I say, I've made my performances way better
Yeah.
on in the studio. It's quite daunting initially, just the dance of it, and but once you get used to, you just it's like jumping off, it's like jumping off the tightrope and just going, I'll fall safely,
Yeah.
and have a go. And on that third beat, just do it.
Yeah. And
And
it's funny
I
how,
found it better to not look at the screen, just
oh,
get the
really?
cadence to get the, yeah, don't try and even match it up with, just get the cadence and the rhythm and the timing of the speech
Well,
and
the
just
rhythm is
say,
the key, isn't it? The rhythm is that you have to nail the rhythm down of what you did
yeah.
before. And there were some times where I was like, you talk too fast.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, no, that's I know sometimes, yeah, we do that as actors. Where are we in the show? So Malcolm arrives and we're sequestered away. You've since found out that there's a direct route from the catacombs to the sort of room where the Andorians are holding.
Well, I tossed that little icon
Yes,
through,
the icon. Yeah,
yeah,
the
and I go
marker.
back and I find it.
And uh, and that leads Malcolm to understand that he can blow the bejesus out of that stone face in the room that the Andorians are using as their HQ.
And that was very 70s, kind of a silly
Very,
explosion.
wasn't it? It was very MacGyver. Yeah, yeah. It was a good stunt because I think Jeff actually probably did that. It looked like he did, you know.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, I think he did.
Um, but I mean, I do want to back up a little bit to Jeff. I mean, when he shows up, man, he owned Shran.
Mm. Yeah, I did.
And he was dangerous.
Yeah, he is, and he's got a great voice, and
Yeah,
he uses his voice really subtly and well.
right.
And yeah, it's a terrific performance, and it really plays out at the end when he realizes that the humans have helped him no end, and I'm in your debt.
Right.
It's a good moment, and it sets up a watch this space for, I'm coming back, and there's
By the way, the most experienced actor in those scenes in Star Trek was Jeff Combs,
yeah, no kidding.
hands down.
Yeah,
He'd done so many characters from, Voyager and Deep Space Nine,
yeah,
that he was definitely, and it was funny. I remember thinking when I saw him do the first scene, I was like, oh, all right, we got to put your hat on then.
right,
You know,
yeah. Well, yeah, there's a guy
got
here.
a, we got a guy who's really going for it, and that was great.
Yeah, experience. I like the I mean the CGI of the actual sensor array that they're hiding is quite well done. I mean, for its time. I mean, and it must have cost quite a bit of money,
Oh, it's massive.
you know. Um, and it's do you remember in those scenes we used to they used to have us step out onto a landing that they'd built and look out into a green screen, and that's all we got. And
Yeah.
yeah, and
So you'd see the episode and go,
I'd always find
oh,
that the
wow.
hardest, the hardest acting we ever did was that pretend acting. Give me a 5-page scene with another actor any day, but ask me to do a
Absolutely.
reaction shot to a sensor array 5 stories tall, and you're like, well, what face is that? I mean,
Yeah, you don't know. You don't know.
I
You
know.
don't know what you're looking at or what you're going to see on the episode of what you're looking at.
And that's where you've got to trust the director that they're
Yeah.
looking at that reaction shot and they're going, no, that's gonna be fine.
I
Don't,
do
don't
remember one particular scene. It's when we get the torches lit.
Oh, were
I
they
moved
tough?
it.
Because I
I moved
noticed
it.
I
I moved
noticed there
it.
was
I moved it away, and I was like, "Don't light your hair on fire, man, because you got a ton of hairspray going on right now."
I saw that in your face, the slight fear of the
Yeah, it was
lit
like,
torch.
"Oh boy,
I did note that. I went, oh, that was the moment. That was some business he wasn't really
oh
happy
yeah,
with.
yeah, we got to
There's
keep
nothing
this
like
up here."
business, is there, for an actor? It's like you
Yeah.
are. But I got to chew gum and speak at the same time.
And oh no.
Oh no. This
And then
could
walking through those caves, which we used over and over and
over again. I know they got a lot of use the walkways. Yeah, God bless. Yeah. They were in what we were watching, trying to think the other day. Yeah, the Terra Nova they started and yeah, they were but they've been I mean they just kept
oh yeah,
those in some
reused.
storage place and wheeled them in, God bless. And yeah, but I
Oh
noticed
yeah,
that
yeah.
business with the torch. What do you think of that scene between Jolene and Scott when she's freezing and the blanket? It's rather tender actually, and I liked it.
I did too. I mean, this
You
was
know,
one of the moments where I thought, and this was what our show was doing. I think initially was having that kind of uncertain possibility of them having a relationship.
right? Yeah, I'd forgotten that was still they hadn't decided, had they?
No, not then, not by that point. No.
No,
And also, it's one of the last times I remember that there's this whole notion that we smell badly to them.
yeah, it doesn't. I can't remember it. We'll see as we go forward, but I don't remember it coming up quite so,
I don't either.
again so distinctly. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And it's a lovely scene. And I think that there was mileage there that they may not have
Right,
um
mind. Right,
used or mined
right.
with that. Because look, I mean, minus the wig, there was no taking your eyes off Jolene.
No, no, she's good looking. Yeah.
And I know that in the first at least season and maybe this into the second season, they were toying with the idea. I mean, clearly we'll see it more that 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 there may have been some sort of tension slash possibility of a relationship between the captain and T'Pol, and then that shifted over to Trip.
Yeah, and probably rightfully so, really, in a way. I mean, it would have tied them into a corner that they didn't need to stay stuck in.
Yeah, agreed.
With, and it would have diminished somehow. It would have diminished Scott's role as the captain, I think, if they'd given it,
Yeah, I
because they
agree.
couldn't make it meaningless. It would have to be meaningful.
Right.
And yeah, and better. And look, I mean, I was thinking, God knows, Scott was 50, pretty much close to 50 when he started shooting that show. And man, he was throwing himself around in those fight scenes and the beat up scenes,
He
and
got his ass kicked in this episode.
he got his ass kicked in this episode. And I mean, God, he did a lot of that stuff himself.
Yeah.
Vince Diedrich was his stunt guy, wasn't he? And
Yeah, but he was like two-thirds his size.
but yeah, and no kidding. And Yeah, I was in. I mean, we said when he came on the show, and then I said to him, I said, I remember celebrating his 50th birthday and thinking, oh, no, that's old.
I know. And look at us now.
Look at us now. Yeah, 50.
Yeah, 50. I loved
He was
50.
he was in such good shape, and
Yeah.
uh,
I also think that this was a good episode for Scott's character as Archer in terms of like evaluating an environment. Archer really wants to go down and explore this just to say hi,
mm,
and realizes that something's going on, and then he makes sure that he he makes sure that he is responsible for the actions that he's done.
hmm mm.
And I think that's very interesting. He takes responsibility for one thing, and then when it becomes clear that the Vulcans are definitely doing something, he's a fair actor.
Yes, indeed, and clearly, I mean, God bless the monks. They've been lying barefaced to us since we got there. They
Yeah,
can't not have known that this was, directly happening under their feet.
of
Um,
course they knew.
no, of course, so and yeah, you're right. I mean, I like that about the episode that it's he maintains that it's now it's our job to somehow make this fair and square. And
Well,
yeah,
interestingly, also, Archer sides with, as a fair play act, he sides with the Andorians.
yeah, yeah.
In the meantime, he doesn't even know them.
No,
He
and
also has had a relationship with the Vulcans, who have done this, that, or the other thing.
yeah,
But
there's history
in
there.
the end, he basically says, yeah, there's a reason we don't trust them, and
Here it
you
is.
guys were right.
Yeah.
And then Shran says, we're in your debt,
Mm.
and that plays out for the rest of our show.
Yeah. And it's said in a way the we're in your debt. It's said with sincerity, but it's also said with menace in a way.
Yeah,
That I shall somehow I'm going to repay this debt, and then we're done. And
exactly.
yeah, I don't like being in your
And
debt.
then I'll kill you all.
And then
Yeah, right.
yeah,
No, but it's wonderful. It's I want to reiterate how great it was to introduce Jeffrey Combs as Shran, who became, over the course of our series, such an important character,
mm.
to the point where this may be rumor, there's maybe truth to it, that they had considered or were going to make Shran a series regular in season 5.
Well, but it doesn't surprise me, and I think Manny certainly loved the idea of Jeff being a main character.
Yeah,
And that's too bad. I know, when they do the Rat Pack stuff at the conventions, they have a song about the third season when the Zindi came in, and Vaughn and Jeff didn't they weren't featured because
right.
we went off in another direction, and much to their chagrin. Yeah, they do a nice little ditty about fuck the Zindi.
I mean, it's funny. We were in San Francisco just, what was it, 3 weeks ago?
hmm
And we're sitting there. There was this lovely guy who provided just extraordinary wines.
Yeah.
And Jeff had come out. And by the way, I'm building this up because this is the same thing I hear all the time. It was like, you guys should have gone 5 seasons or 7 seasons. And I remember sitting there having a glass of amazing wine, and Jeff sits down and he just sits back and goes, we should have gone 5. And I was like, you too? I've done this all day long. You got to give me a
Well,
break. Yeah, I agree. But you know what?
yeah, no, we were, yeah, hoisted unduly. It's too bad. I know. We had at least 5 or 6 in us, that's for sure. Especially with Manny
Yeah, but you know what?
in
I think
in
that
charge.
what we did do is worthy of pride and praise.
No, agreed. Yeah, absolutely. No, I'm very proud of what we did. Um, what else? So I'm just trying to think it through to the end now. Yeah. So
Well, they open up, they turn the head, and it all shows up.
amazing sets, weren't they? I mean, just when you think of yeah, the stuff that they built, uh, it literally in
It
a week.
boggles my mind how someone in because you have to remember that when you're writing, especially the beginning of a series, I think, um, you're doing episode, and the minutia wherein they are determining how our show is going to go forward.
Hmm.
The things that they did, one, Phlox being who he is, you sit in the captain chair. Um, Me saying just like, well, fill the air tires higher. Um, Scott being Archer really holding on to his ethos of what it means to be who we are and what we're doing, and
Explorers and yeah, yeah,
To Paul really holding on to her Vulcanness. I mean, that's a
pushing back
really good
against that.
episode.
Yeah.
That's a really good episode, and we're very quickly into our first season.
Yeah, we are, and as you say, that there are these little incidents in each teleplay that just slightly flesh out each character a little more each time, and who they are, and the
Right.
relationship they have with one another, and to their mission, and yeah,
One thing about that I realized. So as a boomer, Mayweather not knowing who Andorians are was
hmm
like he should have known.
right, yeah, in the lore of it all, you mean?
Yeah,
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 yeah, right, right, yeah.
yeah.
Um, Well, and I think, yeah, ultimately to go back to Roxanne, she did a really good job, and
Fantastic job.
yeah, it was well.
Um,
She was so nervous. I mean, she was very, very thoroughly prepared, but there was definitely, and as we since now, she's gone on to have a stellar career
Stellar career. And I
as a
remember
director.
early on, she was like, because a lot of times what directors do often is that they'll script it out. They'll write it out. They'll make an image of what their
hmm
scene is supposed to look
They'll
like,
storyboard it. Yeah.
storyboard it from place to place to place. And I've said this before. I remember her going like, okay, Connor, when Archer says this, I need you to walk over there.
What?
I was like, well, why? And she goes, because I need you to walk over there. And I went, oh,
It's in the book.
I'm gonna go get a bag of peanuts. And she
Yeah.
goes, yes, go get a
Yes.
bag of
Go
peanuts.
back. Yeah. Yeah. And I liked, in some ways, I mean, I liked some of her direction in that respect, that it did move scenes around, and she had an idea of how the camera was going to follow you. And it's a bit like doing a play, isn't it? It's
Yeah,
like you can't just stay sat in the chair as much as you'd like to for the entire scene. You've got to get
right.
up at some point and move around because, otherwise it's
And
what's,
that's one of the great things about this episode, and I think that we'll see further on about her work, is that she continues to keep things move even slightly.
yeah, quite fluid.
It starts off with one person on a close up, and then you shift into it, and then you've got a three shot.
Yeah.
And no, I think that it's a good schooling of a director, especially, my God, when having, like I said, so many actors in a room.
Mm. Yeah, it's daunting
Yeah,
yeah, exactly. It's very daunting because it's like, and you've got to lay out the geography of that. And for a long time, it always just befuddled me, the crossing the line thing. You know,
Yeah.
it was like math to me. It was like, what are you talking about? I mean,
Right.
just point the camera at us. But yeah, but you're looking the wrong way. Now it
Right.
looks like you were looking at them over here, and now you're looking at them over there. And I'm
Yeah.
like, oh, it's standing when you're in the scene to be able to stand outside of the scene and see it from their perspective is not
It's
easy.
almost like looking above it and looking
Yeah,
down.
it is. Yeah. And there's a line through it.
Yeah.
Apparently, dinner tables are the worst. If you're presented with a dinner table scene, it's like, oh God,
Oh no.
where's everyone sitting? Who are they? How are they looking at each other?
How was
Yeah.
dinner?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
If you've got 12 people at a dinner table, it's like, geez, that's going to be a tough one.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that was a good chat about. I can't think of. Is there anything else you can think of?
No. No, I
I
think,
like it. It's a good episode,
yeah,
and
I mean, in my mind, um, Shadows of Pajem, that's what it's called, right?
yeah.
Is the first
Oh, the
episode,
Andorian Incident. Sorry, it's called the
Andorian
Andor.
Incident.
Yeah. There's
Shadows
another
of
one
Pajem is
coming up.
later. That's
Shadows of
later.
Vision.
And the Andorian Incident is the first episode where we are actually on our way.
Yeah. True. It is.
Yeah,
And yeah, and we've sort of we've drawn our line, and this is our course, and
right,
yeah.
right.
And I guess that sort of hokiness and thigh slapping stuff at the beginning is all part of yeah, our first faltering steps into a new world. Yeah,
Yeah,
as humans, have money will travel.
exactly.
And
Yeah. And I can literally take 10 screenshots of me just kind of going like,
yeah, yeah, brilliant. They got catfish down there.
that's right. If you're out of gas, go to the gas tank, go to the store.
All right, it's been a fun one.
Yeah, take care of your finger.
Yeah, I know. Look at that, lads. Look at everyone.
It's funny how it disappears because your
Yeah, I know. Look
background
at
is
that.
gray. It looks like you lost your finger entirely.
Look at that. That's hilarious.
It's gone.
Yeah.
All right, love you guys. Thank you.
Ciao.